All right, get ready because today we're diving into a framework that could literally change how you see, well, everything. We're going to explore a universe that isn't built from things, but from happenings.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a big question. Picture a rock. What do you think is more fundamental, more real? The rockness itself? The solid object you can hold? Or is it the constant, buzzing, dynamic web of forces and interactions that hold it all together, creating the appearance of a solid thing?
Our default setting, the way we walk around every day, is to see a world of nouns. We see tables, planets, people. It's a universe of static objects that, sometimes bump into each other. It's a reality based on substance.
But what if that's not the full picture? What if it's all backwards? The idea we're exploring today proposes a pretty radical paradigm shift. What if reality is fundamentally built from verbs? What if the interactions themselves are primary, and all the things we see are just the after effect?
This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the familiar noun first view. Objects exist, and then things happen to them. But look at the right. The verb first view flips the script entirely. It says interaction is the absolute bedrock of reality. Objects don't just have interactions. Objects are what happens when interactions become stable and persistent. So this brings us to our new starting point, our new foundation, axiom 0. We're not beginning with matter or space or energy. We're starting with the one thing that is absolutely undeniable. Something is happening, and interaction is occurring. In this view, existence isn't a state of being, it's the happening itself.
Okay, so I know what you're thinking. If everything is just a sea of pure interaction, where do the solid objects come from? How do we get a rock from a bunch of verbs? Well, let's build this new reality together, piece by piece.
The journey from pure action to a persistent object seems to happen in a few key steps. First, you get simple interactions forming stable, repeating patterns. But then, something amazing happens. Those patterns begin to interact with their own history. That's called reflexive interaction. And this self-referencing loop, it leads to the most important step of all, registration. Let's really zero in on this idea of registration or the recorder. Every time an interaction happens, the universe makes a record of it. It leaves a stamp. This simple act of creating a record, a kind of memory, is the key that unlocks everything from identity to time itself. And this is where it really starts to bend your brain. In this model, time isn't a river we're floating down. It's not a fourth dimension you can travel along. Time is simply the ordered sequence of those registration events. The universe is recording itself, one interaction at a time. And that sequence of records is what we experience as the flow of time. So, this is how we finally get our solid nouns back. The identity of a rock or a view isn't some static chunk of stuff. It is topological stability. A thing is just a pattern of interaction that has gotten incredibly good at holding its shape as it keeps interacting with the world. We aren't nouns. We are verbs that are just very, very good at persisting. Now, this whole new way of looking at things isn't just some fun philosophical game. Here's the real payoff. According to the source, this interaction-first model offers some surprisingly elegant solutions to the biggest, most stubborn puzzles in modern physics. So let's start with a really big one, the observer effect. You've probably heard of this. In quantum mechanics, a particle is just a fuzzy cloud of possibilities until you measure it. The moment you look, it snaps into one definite state. But why? Why does the simple act of looking at it change reality? The standard view gets all tangled up in weird ideas about a conscious observer. But the interaction-first view just cuts right through that. It's not about consciousness. It says any interaction, from a human, a camera, another particle, it doesn't matter, forces a registration. A record has to be made. And in that moment of recording, the fuzzy cloud of potential has to resolve into something actual and definite. It's the engagement itself, not the mind behind it, that makes reality concrete. Okay, let's tackle another giant, mass. We think of it as just how much stuff is in an object. Simple, right? But what if mass isn't a property of a thing at all? What if it's a property of the entire system around the thing? This model rebrands mass as configurational inertia. And what that means is it's the resistance a pattern has to changing what it's doing. But here's the twist. That resistance doesn't come from inside the pattern. It comes from how deeply woven, how entangled that pattern is with the entire network of interactions that we call the universe. And this table just makes the difference so clear. The old noun-first view says mass is intrinsic. It's located inside an object. More stuff equals more mass. But the verb-first view says no, mass is relational. It's expressed by the system. An object has more mass, more configurational inertia, not because it's full of more stuff, but because its pattern is more deeply interconnected with everything else. Let me put that another way, because this is a huge takeaway. Mass is not an inventory of your internal parts. It is a measure of how much the entire universe has to shift and reconfigure itself just to allow you to change your state. An object with a lot of mass is just an object with very deep, very stable relationships with everything else. And once you get that, other physics puzzles just start to click into place. Think about time dilation near a black hole. Time isn't literally stretching. It's just that the registration density is super high. The interactions are so intense that the rate at which the universe can make new records, new moments, actually slows down. Or quantum entanglement. The particles aren't sending secret messages. They aren't two things. They are and always were a single shared pattern. When you measure one part, the entire pattern registers the event as one unit, instantly. And this quote just reframes the whole problem beautifully. It suggests that the paradoxes we see in physics aren't reality being weird. They are basically error messages in our thinking, signs that our old, comfortable, noun-first map of the world just doesn't work anymore. So, let's take this idea to its most profound conclusion. If we can rebuild objects and time from pure interaction, what about the most mysterious thing in the universe? What about consciousness? In this model, consciousness isn't some ghost in the machine. It's seen as a totally natural, emergent property of interaction. Think of it like a whirlpool in a river. When an interaction pattern becomes so dense, so stable, and so complex that it can start recording its own history, when it becomes reflexive, that's the moment consciousness emerges. So, what about our experience of right now? The now moment is the active, living, cutting edge where the infinite potential of the universe is constantly collapsing and crystallizing into the one concrete reality that we experience. It is the living event horizon of actualization. And that leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending thought. If you are not a noun, but a verb, a complex, self-recording pattern of interaction, then what are you interacting with right now? The universe isn't a place you are in. It's an action that you are doing.